the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to invite you into two parts of an issue that I know is deeply important to all of you. It's come up in the last part of the questions of President Dudley. It is, of course, the honor system and academic integrity. The first part relates to a program I'm privileged to lead as the campus administrator, having succeeded its founder, John Gunn, a name well known to you, and then later Dean Lou John. The name of the program is the S. Cullum Owings Jr. Fellowship, and here is the background. The Institute for Honor, as many of you in the class of 1960 know well, because it came out of your pocketbooks, was endowed by generous gifts from the class of 1960 to recognize and promote the benefits of personal and academic integrity they experienced as W&L students, in particular under the honor system. From that sprung what is called the Initiative for Academic Integrity in Secondary Schools, which grew out of the Institute for Honor as a means of promoting these same values. The two main purposes of this initiative are to engage and help secondary and middle school students and leaders identify and support each other in promoting academic integrity and honorable behavior. And number two, to foster conversations promoting integrity through the establishment of an honor system or to strengthen a pre-existing honor system. That initiative is carried out through the S. Cullum Owings Jr. Fellowship, funded by gifts to honor Cullum, a very, very revered and distinguished member of the class of 2003, who died tragically on his way back to campus following Thanksgiving break in 2002. Any rising junior or senior at Washington and Lee can apply. And following our interview of finalists, we select up to 3 students as the Owings Fellows for the following academic year. They each receive a $2,500 tuition grant each term, and these young people visit secondary and middle schools all over the United States upon invitation of those schools to foster community conversations there about these important issues. It's my pleasure to introduce this year's Owings Fellows, the Catherine Latour, Harrison Travis, and Will Schirmer. I'm going to get out of the way and let them take it away. Good morning and thank you.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Latour, as Mr. Dudley just introduced, and I'm currently a senior English and Business Administration major, and this is my second year serving as an Owings Fellow.
My name's Harrison Travis. I'm from Monroe, Louisiana. I'm a junior, and I'm a Business Administration major, but I am following a pre-med track, so hopefully I'll go to med school.
Good morning. I'm Will Schirmer. I'm from Southern Pines, North Carolina, and I'm an Economics and Math major.
So to give you a little bit more background about the Owings Fellowship and the work that we do, I would just love to dive into maybe like what a trip looks like. So actually, this Monday we're headed to Texas to talk about the honor system in Lubbock, which is where I'm originally from. And so on this trip, we show up to this school that we have been in communication with, and they will invite other local private schools to their institution, and we'll give roughly an hour-long presentation on Washington and Lee's honor system and the meaning that that has to us and how that affects our daily life. And then we'll dive into the school's honor code or honor system. And with that, we recognize that many high schools don't have an honor system, but instead an honor code, or potentially just a list of rules that they follow. But we engage with them thoughtfully to talk about how these rules affect them and how that they cause them to engage with their schoolwork or their sports, along with other aspects of their daily life. And then we loop that back to Washington and Lee's honor system and the great benefit that has to us. And so after giving this presentation and walking through those aspects and really just sharing about how much we love our honor system and the many benefits, we then have breakout sessions with, whether that be student council or National Honor Society, to get down to the nitty-gritty of what problems their school is facing and what benefits their honor system or honor code offers. And in some instances, we meet with schools who have neither an honor system nor an honor code, but hope to create one. And so through these dialogues, we then group back together and try to figure out what are the main problems this school is facing and how could an honor system or a strengthened honor code benefit them. And while we're doing this with the students, Mr. Dudley has the opportunity to meet with faculty and staff and to talk to the faculty and staff about problems that they recognize within their students or hopes that they have of an honor system being established. And then we all meet back together and kind of give one final presentation on kind of our diagnosis, and that we celebrate the good that the school has and then kind of provide ideas or recommendations that we believe that the school would benefit from. And then roughly, 1 to 2 weeks later, we give them a written proposal, and that allows them to really have the time to digest everything that we offer to them and make changes. And so something very remarkable about this program is, time and time again, we've gone to these schools and we've had such positive experiences as we learn from these students. And it sharpens us as students, but also benefits the school. And in many instances, we go to high schools or middle schools that have an honor code or do not have an honor code. And from our visits, they either make changes to that code or in some instances choose to implement an honor code system, which is remarkable and just shows the benefit and impact that this fellowship has. And so now that we've kind of offered this general, outline of what the program has, Harrison and Will are going to dive into a few other aspects of it.
So one of the first things, like Catherine was saying, is we go through a presentation. And so basically it's just a little PowerPoint that we go through to kind of describe the difference between necessarily an honor code versus an honor system, whereas a code has a distinct list of rules that if you violate, this punishment happens and this happens, whereas our honor system, that we like to say, is the fact that we have these kind of understood community-oriented goals, and that we ultimately have that trust, and it's no one punishment for this, but it's ultimately decided by the community. And so we also, I think the main thing that I like to do, and I'm excited to do, is it's easy to tell people this is good, but really I think that the thing that people get the most out of is showing through your stories and the experiences that you've had about why you enjoy it so much. So I'm gonna go into some of the stories that for instance, why in my experience at WNL, how I've had the blessing and to be able to, leave computers out in the middle of the library. Mom gets horrified when I tell her that, but the fact that I can leave it out for a day and come back and it'll be there. Or the incredible honor that, I have a final exam and it was in spring term and I was gonna miss my sister's senior graduation from high school, and I talked to my professor and he not only let me take it, he literally let me take my exam back to Louisiana, and I was able to mail it back. And so we had that sense of trust and community orientation that, we are able to do that and understand that, I was going to uphold my academic integrity and, abide by the rules that I would have done if I was taken in the class. And then we also like to kind of distinguish the different aspects, how that could look in a high school, because it's kind of difficult to see, because there are some differences. And the main thing that I like to do in explaining because it seems so easy to cheat or whatnot, and why would you do that? One thing that I like to stress is that it seems like every year you get a little more knowledge on the same topics. And so I always like to say, well, if you cheated, your 8th grade year and then you see it your freshman year, you're gonna have to relearn that anyway. And so you're really just hampering yourself in the fact that you're missing out on some knowledge and a deeper understanding of the material that you wouldn't otherwise have. But if you, upheld some honor and integrity and really learned it the first time, you'd be so surprised at how much more you could pick up the next couple times, which was kind of always astounding in my view. So
yeah, so this is my first year in the program, and I think I'm really excited because of the unique position that we're in. As college seniors and juniors and being able to travel to high schools, I think we have the ability to connect with these individuals and inspire them in quite a unique way. I know as a high schooler, if an administrator had come in and told me about an honor system or about an honor code, I probably would have been zoned out the whole presentation and not really appreciate it. But as almost their peers, I think we have the ability to connect with them through this presentation and then more meaningfully through the breakout sessions afterwards and discuss what they think is right for their school and what they would like to see implemented in their school. And the ability to share these incredible experiences with the honor system that Harrison is talking about is something that I'm really excited for, and I hope that we can make a meaningful contribution to their high schools, their middle schools, and their honor foundation. I think that the time in high school is really important in building future values of integrity and personal development. So hopefully I think we can have a really profound impact.
Yes. So that's kind of an overarching view of what the Owings Fellowship looks like and the impact that we hope to have. But we would love to open the floor for questions, just to hear more about your thoughts or any questions you might have. Yes.
Students coming from whatever high school they've been attending come to WNL and will face, obviously, some pretty strong academic pressure to perform, most likely from their parents, but from themselves as well. How do you talk to them, or what do you say to them about reconciling dealing with that pressure and dealing with the honor system, which can sometimes, test them a little bit?
That's a great question, and something that we actually have faced through conversation. Even in the high school level, these students say that they feel this immense academic pressure to perform, to excel, whether that be because of their parents or because of the colleges they want to get into. And with that, we just encourage them. It's kind of to Harrison's point that, academics, and as you learn, as you engage with material, it builds on itself. And so if you're committed to your education and to, the betterment of yourself, you would place that value before that of maybe an A or an A+, because at the end of the day, when you get to Washington and Lee, it's much more important the material that you're learning and how you're engaging with your professors and other students than the grade on one singular test.
Yeah, and I would also point out that I think like an honor system or an honor code can be a real advantage to academics. I think the trust that develops between instructors and students can be really important in developing the relationship between the two. In a subject, it's much easier to learn if you are inspired by the person who's teaching you, if you're engaged in the topic, and then there's also other more tangible benefits. At Washington Lee, obviously, we're able to take our exams, our final exams, during a week-long period versus having them scheduled at a strict time, and that gives us more flexibility to succeed, or if we need a couple extra hours, to take those couple hours and study. And I think that the honor system really provides that flexibility and also provides a strong foundation of trust for the relationship between instructors and students.
I also would like to say that, I think that to your question that, for me personally, coming to WNL, looking at the honor system was a major reason that, I wanted to attend this university and being able to really better myself. And I think that one thing I always tell freshmen at this university, I always say, you got into this great place for a reason. You're very, very smart. You're very capable. Just rely on yourself, trust yourself. And, you might have to go through some rebuilding of how to learn. I mean, I went to a public high school and didn't have to study as much, and then came here and had an intense rigor, and I had to relearn how to study. And so I think that, when they're struggling with that, I like to go through some different points and topics and aspects that they could adjust how they've learned in the past to how they could, succeed in the future, and not necessarily focus so much on the grades, as Catherine was saying, but more about kind of an underlying understanding of the material and really kind of having that self-satisfaction of how much more you learned. So,
a couple of quick ones. When we were here, there was a pretty much of a hash made out of civil liberties on the charges. You had a star chamber proceeding that charged you, and then you could ask for a trial by students, which never occurred. And I understood that after we left that there were a few trials and that there were a few not guilty verdicts. And I also understood from the lady's presentation that perhaps now you have gradations in punishment. Can you comment on those two questions?
So actually, I believe that after this presentation, Will Bolton, the president of our executive committee, is going to be talking about the honor system, and I'm sure that he will be able to answer that in better detail.
Can't answer those two things?
He will.
He will.
Have you had any feedback from schools that have adopted an honor system after your presentation, and if so, what has that been? Has it been easy or a difficult transition?
Yes, we actually last semester gave 3 presentations, and from one of the schools, they did not have an honor code. It's Duchesne in Houston, which is a Sacred Heart school. And although they had these, foundation principles, they ultimately adopted an honor code and have actually reached out to us within the past few months and said that it's been very beneficial and that they really appreciated the presentation, and that presentation alone is the reason that they're implementing the honor code.
Yeah, over the long term, it's fair to say that many of these schools will get back to us after we leave and they get the written report from the students. They are very grateful. The conversations have continued on those campuses. That's why we went in the first place. I'm going to turn them loose, but I wish very much that we had the ability to invite 20 or 30 of you to one of these presentations on a high school campus. Be clear, I introduce them and basically leave the room. And Will is so right that their ability to connect with these people at that age and get them thinking about aspirational values of academic and personal integrity, it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done at Washington and Lee, to watch our students in action on the values that matter so much to all of us. Catherine is catching her plane to Lubbock, Texas in about 2 hours from Roanoke. The rest of us will join her down there on Sunday night, and we will be at a school in Lubbock on Monday. So I'm going to turn the Owings fellows loose. I'll see you guys in Houston, or Lubbock rather. So what a pleasure to introduce the person in charge of the honor system these days at Washington and Lee. His name is Will Bolton. I'm going to leave all of the time to him. So Will, please begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and then an overview of your executive committee and the honor system at today. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Can everybody hear me? Sorry, this mic is a little low. Or I'm a little tall, one of the two. Like Mr. Dudley said, my name is Will Bolton. I'm from Harford County, Maryland. If any of you aren't up on your Maryland geography, that's about 45 minutes north of Baltimore. I'm a senior politics and economics major. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for coming out. It seems like y'all have been in this room listening to people talk for a while now. So I will try to keep it interesting. Before I start, I do have some stuff I'd like to go over. I think the first one is thank you. You all obviously have been gone for more than 50 years, but the honor system that you all left.
Sorry, not attacking you. Here we go. Mm-hmm. There we go.
The honor system that you all clearly left to the classes after you is alive and well, and it's been my privilege to make sure that I do the same as well as you all did. But first, I want to get to the gentleman's question in the back because he really didn't get an answer. Could you repeat that for me, sir?
There were a couple of them. I think you could answer them very quickly. When we were here, there were virtually no civil liberties for the accused. It was a star chamber process, and you could ask for a trial, but nobody did. Later, I understood that there were some trials and some not guilties. I wondered what had happened there, and the lady's presentation seemed to indicate that there were gradations in punishment now. There weren't any in those days.
I'm going to answer your last question first because I think it's the most important. There are not gradations and punishments for the honor system. If you're found guilty of an honor violation, you are asked to leave the university, and you either leave the university or request what we now call a student body hearing. The way this process works is if you're accused of an honor violation, there will be an investigation. If the investigation determines that it's necessary, we will hold an executive committee hearing. There is some level of protections for accused students now, which can all be found in the white book, and I'm sure someone can get you all a white book, or I can get you a white book if you're curious. But effectively, it's just some guarantees that they'll be able to see the evidence against them, question the witnesses against them, basic stuff like that you would hope would exist in any justice system. And so if in that executive committee hearing, if you're found guilty of an honor violation, we impose the single sanction unless you appeal that decision. If you appeal that decision, you go to a student body hearing in which the executive committee demonstrates to the entire student body in public, usually held in Lee Chapel, but sometimes in the moot courtroom, why their decision was correct and the accused has in fact violated the trust of the community. And if they are found guilty in that, they are required to leave the university. So the single sanction is still very much in place. I also think that it's maybe the most important aspect of the honor system. So hopefully it's not going anywhere. Yes, sir.
How are your members chosen? Is it the same as it always has been to become a member of the executive committee?
I have to say I'm not sure how it always has been, but now it's through, there's an election. And so the executive committee is currently made up of 13 members when it's at full strength. It's 1 freshman representative and 1 first-year law student representative. It's 2 representatives for all of the other undergrad classes, and then 1 second-year law student representative, 1 third-year law student representative, and then we have a secretary, vice president, and president, who's myself. Yes, sir. Sorry, did that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir.
A little past history. Around 1952, West Point had a cheating on the football team, and we had it here too. We went to the Gator Bowl and played Wyoming, but it was very sad. They got into a professor's office and got exam copies, and it spread out through our football team. And due to that fact, one of our team members, very poor student, was on scholarship. He was forced to leave, and that was very sad. Another thing happened back then. We had a straight A student in qualitative analysis chemistry. His older brother was on the faculty here. I guess he was scared that he wasn't going to get his A on the test. He cheated on one of his exams in qualitative analysis chemistry, and he was forced, he just left because it was very embarrassing to his brother. So there was things back then, and there was punishment, and a lot of it was self-induced, except for that football player. It was very sad.
And I think that you make an absolutely fair point. The worst part of my job is finding someone guilty of an honor violation, because asking someone to leave this university, knowing the benefits of this university, I can't imagine having to do it myself. That being said, I think it's an important part of the university that we do ask those who have violated our trust to leave. The way I understand the single sanction is that the single sanction is not a punishment. Students can leave and go about their lives and have successful lives at other universities. It's more about protecting the community. And when you've demonstrated that you're unable or unwilling to fully participate in our community by violating our trust, you no longer have a place here. And that's why I think the single sanction is so important, and that's why I think those sad but necessary moments do happen when people make bad decisions. Yes,
A little more history of the football. I happened to be one of the people here at the time, and I elected to stand trial. And it's one of the most onerous things I have ever experienced in my whole life. The trial by my peers accepted my explanation, and of course they had to look at the planted questions and see that I bombed every one of those to know that I had not been one of the guys that cheated. When you go to the high schools, you don't have the right to expel, or expulsion is not part of the program. How do you sell our honor system to a high school when the remedy is not expulsion? I'm sure you've got to have a lot of other conditions and solutions and everything else involved.
I'm sure they do. I'm actually not an Owings fellow. I was a little bit busy when the applications came around, and so I decided not to. But I'm sure Mr. Dudley or one of those students could answer that. I will say that I think you're probably right that high schools maybe don't want to have a single sanction. That would be a lot, I think, for a high schooler, but I obviously think it's appropriate in this scenario. We had one more question, and then I'm going to run through my...
Well, let me answer that one for you. When we visit high schools, we are very careful to go lightly on our single sanction. We have 7th and 8th graders frequently in that room, as we will on Monday in Texas. And you can imagine the look of sort of shock and awe at that concept at that early age. So we study the system that they have in place or what they are thinking about, and we try to be supportive of what their culture needs to be, not to come down and say, you need to have the Washington and Lee honor system, and we believe in the single sanction, and you should have it too. So it is designed to get them talking about what's best for their schools.
Yep.
How many prospective honor violations in an average year?
So this is my 3rd year on the executive committee. We put out an honor report, which has all of the sort of like various procedures that had to take place last year, and this is sort of my rough memory of what it was. I think we had about 14 accusations. We had probably 5 or 6 executive committee hearings, and then we had 1 student body hearing.
Is that typical?
It's been typical for the executive committees I've been on. From speaking with Dean Evans, because she's been here for so long and seen. She's the Dean of Student Affairs. If you all haven't had a chance to meet her, it sounds like it's incredibly high. I think that hopefully the executive committee is doing a good job of having people trust us to adjudicate problems, and so we're getting a lot of reports when maybe those reports just weren't being made. But that's sort of where that is. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a little history. One of my fraternity brothers was dismissed the 2nd semester of his senior year. That was a tough one. And he went to Gettysburg College and started the honor system there. I thought, much to his credit. The question I have is it still entered in the transcript? When we were here, it was on your transcript if you were asked to leave.
So like many things about our honor system, it has a more complicated answer than the question. It depends. If you're found guilty in that executive committee hearing, which is entirely confidential, and you withdraw after being found guilty, the transcript reads withdrawn. And that's in order to protect the confidentiality of the process. And because we do hold such a higher standard than most universities, we think that's an important protection. If, however, you appeal to a student body hearing, which is the public hearing in which you're tried by a jury of your peers and found guilty, your transcript will read dismissed. And that's sort of the balance there. So thank you for the questions. I'm happy we got a lot of those out of the way because you asked a lot of things I was going to say. Sort of my understanding of the honor system, and I hope that it's similar to yours because otherwise I might not be doing my job, but I understand the honor system as an expectation of decent behavior. The honor system is still uncodified. I think that's the sort of the second twin of the single sanction that the two pillars that our honor system stands on. So to me, Washington Lee students are expected to act decently towards one another and to not take advantage of one another even when provided the opportunity. I think one of the coolest experiences of a W&L student is getting an exam and taking it to your dorm room and having your textbook and notes that you need to take the exam on your desk and not using them, even though you're alone in a room you could lock and no one would ever know the difference. That's something that's happened to me. I think that every W&L student has had that experience. I also think the honor system extends outside of just academics. There is no jurisdiction for honor, and W&L students should be honorable as opposed to acting honorably. And that means that whether you're in the library, whether you're at a party, whether you're at your internship, the W&L diploma and the W&L student should be able to be expected to act in such a way as to not take advantage or violate the trust of the people they're interacting with. And hopefully we're still seeing that way, and that is the goal. In terms of practical stuff that I want to do, I think it's important that my executive committee leaves the honor system better than we found it. And the first piece of that for me is faculty outreach. I think that often there's some concern amongst faculty that they're letting 13 undergrads or law students run such an important aspect of their classrooms, and I think that that's a reasonable concern. So I'm hoping that my executive committee does a better job meeting with professors, being proactive when professors have concerns, and also just being available to people to speak about how we understand the honor system. I'm also currently working, this is why I'm taking notes for all these cool pieces of history. I'm currently working with the new director of institutional history, or we will be working together. We've had one meeting about creating an archive, a student-maintained archive of a history of the honor system. Because the honor system is passed down from folks like you all to me, and hopefully the next generations. I think it's important that the student body, specifically the executive committee of the student body, maintains our own history of how this tradition has gotten to where it is, to make sure that we're keeping that alive and healthy, and that we're not forgetting the important stories that came before us. So that's sort of a long-term goal. Hopefully the future executive committees will agree with me that it's important for us to do that as opposed to have an administrator do it or sort of a historian do it. Somebody mentioned Professor Gunn. I'm hoping to meet with him. It sounds like he's been working on a pretty comprehensive history of the honor system, and so I'd love for that to be our starting place. And then we also have some honors theses and stuff like that that's been written about the honor system. Of course, all of these sort of initiatives build into leaving a better honor system than we found it. I can say that currently the honor system is strong, it's healthy, it's alive on campus. People are talking about it. Our freshman orientation was held in Lee Chapel. That's where they're given what we call the honor speech, or the long pause speech. Sort of colloquially, it's where we tell freshmen, if you're not capable of living up to the expectations of the honor system, you should leave now. No one did, which was nice. And so that went really well. I actually wasn't there for the law student orientation. Unfortunately, I had to be in Germany. So my vice president, who is a law student, handled that for me, and all of the reports were good. So I think that both the new classes have been oriented towards our honor system. I think that there's a lot of buy-in from the new folks. There's continuing buy-in from the sophomores, juniors, seniors, and 2Ls and 3Ls. And so I think that is the state of the honor system. That's sort of what I have. If there's any more questions, I'm happy to take them, unless we're running out of time. Yes?
It's a soft intake with the freshman class. They're not required to sign anything, are they, when they're coming into school?
So the process for the freshmen looks like this. Myself and the executive committee and the freshman class gather in Lee Chapel. President Dudley comes in and introduces himself and a little bit about the sort of who they're about to hear. So introduces me, introduces the executive committee, and then says, I'm now going to leave because it is your responsibility and the students behind me responsibility to take care of the honor system. And he walks out to signify that it's on the students and not on the administration. And then I give an orientation speech in which I provide some history of the honor system and also the expectations that they're going to experience. Once they have heard that speech and been given a white book, which contains the procedure and details about how the executive committee is administered, they're asked to sign what we call the honor book, which signifies that they have both heard the honor speech and also been given a white book. And that is not a signature agreeing to the honor system, and they are held under the honor system if they do not sign, but it is an acknowledgement that they were properly sort of educated about the honor system. It's also cool to I've had, you know, alum and even myself, because I'm now a senior, which is terrifying, but go back and you can look through where all of, you know, you and your freshman buddies came in together and signed it. You know, folks' names are next to each other. So it's a cool tradition, but that's how that works. Thanks, everybody.